Hi there. It is first draft for the month of May, and we are here today talking about pitches, blurbs, and synopses. So we have a couple special guests with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and get straight to introducing them. Shari, you want to go ahead and tell us who you are and what it is that you write?
Okay. Hi, I'm Shari Slade. I write contemporary, super sexy, new adult, erotic romance.
And Tina, how about you?
I am T.J. Kline, also known as Tina, and I write cute, fun Western romance with a little bit of steam and some feisty cowgirls.
And then we have our regular partners in crime. We have Alexis Ann.
Hi, I'm Alexis Ann. I write contemporary and erotic romance, and you can find me at alexisannbooks.com. I just forgot my website.
It's been a long day, guys. Mary Chris Escobar.
I'm Mary Chris Escobar. I write lighthearted women's fiction, and I'm at marychrisescobar.com. I'm also enjoying a margarita tonight.
Ooh, got strength.
Yes. So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. And I'm Julia Kelly, and I write contemporary and historical romance. So we're all coming from kind of different perspectives. We have a mix of traditionally and self-published authors today. So hopefully we'll give you a broad look at kind of what pitches, blurbs, and synopses mean for all of us in our different areas, and then also kind of some tips, tricks, why you need to focus on these things and maybe why they're dreaded as well. So I'm going to open it up, starting out talking about kind of defining down what we're talking about today. What does it mean when we talk about pitches, blurbs, synopses, and what makes them kind of different from each other? So, Tina, you want to go ahead and start us out on kind of what are you thinking when you're looking at those three areas?
I usually start with my pitch, and so for me, the pitch is kind of what's the main idea behind the book, what is it going to be about in just a couple of sentences. And I want to be able to tell somebody in 2 or 3 sentences, this is what my book is about. For me, the blurb would be more of like the back copy. That's a little more in-depth, not super in-depth, kind of like a teaser, and just gives you a little feel for what my characters are like, just a little more in-depth than what the pitch would be. And then as far as synopses, I love synopses.
that was sarcasm?
That was sarcasm, just a little bit. That's just going to be a more in-depth, what's going to happen throughout the book, hit all the high points, and that can get as in-depth as you really want it to go, and depending on what area you're in, if you're dealing with a traditional publisher, what your editor wants.
So, Shari, you're working recently a lot with self-publishing. Are those definitions sounding pretty solid to you, or is there anything that you approach a little differently?
Well, they pretty much are the same, whether you're traditionally published or self-published. You need to be able to pitch your book. You need to be able to blurb it. The synopsis might be the reason I self-published in the first place.
You're here.
So that I never have to do one of those ever again. The thought of writing a synopsis makes me fall asleep.
I have to write
a dark spell.
I just want to put that out there. So yeah, I guess we'll know what I'm doing after this tonight. But yeah, no, they're dreaded pretty much across every form of writing, everywhere. Horrible.
Yep. I envision things like pens being stabbed into legs when I think of synopses.
Not quite that bad, but
no, I really did. When I was first looking at publishing and the synopsis came up, I was like, what insert bad word here, because oh my gosh, they're in depth for the most part. I mean, you're going line by line on what your story is, and I just wanted to go, just read the book.
Or if you're having to write one, because I think my understanding is sometimes you have to write a synopsis before, like to pitch a book to an agent, which as someone who is not really much of a plotter, that would just be a nightmare. I need to try to sit down and write all that out before I had the book written. So yeah, it definitely sounds miserable. I'm glad I don't have to do it.
Yeah, it's not terribly fun. There are different types of synopses. Some people will ask you for 1 page. So you have to boil your book down to 1 page, including all your introduction of character, all your introduction of major plot points and tone and all of those things. Sometimes you get a little bit more wiggle room and you get 3 to 5 pages, but really you're looking at 5 pages to condense a 90 to 100,000 word book, and that's really challenging. And that means that you're definitely going to end up with some frustration, usually, on some level. So they are not things that people love to write, but hopefully we can kind of give you some direction and guidance in talking about blurbs and synopses and pitches and how to look at your book, whether you've already written it or whether you're pitching for a future series or for a future book. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. But why? Basically, we talked about what they are. Why are they important? Why do we care about these things? Why don't we just kind of throw the whole idea out the window and not do them? Unless you're going to self-publish, and then you have to write synopses. But you still have to write your blurbs and your pitches as well. So
I kind of like the idea of just throw them out the window. I mean, all 3 of them, honestly.
Well, you have to be able to pitch your book to anybody, anytime. You are constantly a salesman, whether you are self-published or traditionally published. So having your pitch, whether it's an elevator pitch or a 1-line pitch or a 5-line pitch, it doesn't matter what it is. You have to be able to look at your audience, whether it's somebody standing in front of you, somebody online, an editor, an agent, whoever it is, and be able to grab them by their shirt and make them want to read your book. So a pitch is integral to your life as a writer.
No, I agree. I think that the blurb and the pitch, that's your marketing. That's everything right there. If you don't have a decent blurb, no one's going to want to read your book.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There are thousands and thousands and thousands of books out there. You have to stand out. You have to tell the reader or the agent or whoever it is why they want to read your book.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that? How do you make yourself stand out in the sea of all these other pitches and all these other blurbs? I know sometimes it feels like no matter what copy you write, it's been done before, and that can be really frustrating when you're kind of first starting out and first starting to write these things, which unfortunately everybody has to write no matter whether you like it or not. Most people don't like it.
I don't mind.
You don't mind at all?
No, I don't mind blurbs or pitches even. Short form really appeals to me.
What is it about it that appeals to you, or that you don't find maybe as challenging as blowing it up into a synopsis?
Well, I mean, I think it's just the way that I think. I tend to think big picture. I'm also all about word choice. And I think that's really what blurb and pitch boil down to, like picking that really great, perfect word. It's like the opposite of drafting, where you don't think about your word choice. You are thinking at the microscopic level, like, what is the best word here? How can I use one word for these 3? And, that's fun for me.
And you're really good at finding words that really grab somebody too. They make you want to stop and look at what is this book about, because you hit that trigger. You hit a trigger word really well, and that's a talent that you have.
And I'm better at it for other people. But
that's actually why we thought when we were brainstorming who we might want to bring on to this, your name came up specifically because AJ Cousins said she writes all my blurbs. And we went, that's interesting. And so we're bringing you on as the expert on this.
Well, I don't think that I count as an expert, but I do get called on a lot by people for assistance in this particular area for titles, taglines, and blurbs all the time.
I think that perspective of having someone else, like the outside perspective, being someone looking in at the work when you're not as close to it, I think maybe does help when you're trying to see that big picture, like you said, Shari. I mean, it really is about boiling this big novel you've written down into kind of what is the central core theme. And so I think sometimes it is easier for someone from the outside maybe to see that and help us generate ideas.
I think the biggest problem that we run into is that we are the creator of those 90,000 words. And so it's really hard to take that step back after the fact and look at what is the important part, because you see the backstory and where they're going to go after the story and all the little nuances, and you want to tell all those things. But that's what the book's for. That's not what the blurb or the pitch are for. And so taking yourself out of that situation is really hard, and if you suck at it, then you need to find someone else to help you.
Or you need to study it, and you need to really read and see what it is. Okay, if I look at this back cover copy, what is it that really grabs my attention, and what are the things that signpost for me? These are the things that are going to make me buy this book. If you're looking in romance, a lot of the times it's the tropes. It's the marriage of convenience. It's the, friends to lovers. It's the big brother's best friend type of story. So what are those things that are both going to grab people, and then how is your book unique as well? I think that those are two things to be considering when you're trying to write these dreaded, horrible things.
I know for me...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I know for me, too, when I first started... Lexi, you're funny. When I first started... She's flirting with the camera, too. I thought of the old TV guides and how they used to, when they would just give 2 or 3 lines for the description of the show, and I thought, okay, well, how am I going to describe my book in 2 or 3 lines? And that's all the room I'm going to have, because sometimes, on Twitter, if you're going to put what it's about, or, if you're going to talk to somebody in the elevator and you have 30 seconds to tell them, you better only have 2 or 3 sentences to, grab a hold of them. So, yeah, make it a little bit of a shock factor type of thing, or, a fun, if your book is a comedy, then have something funny, in your line, but let it be your voice in that short little blurb.
And I think also the biggest thing that I focus on is the conflict. It comes down to conflict always. That's what the tropes are. That's what, when you're reading a blurb and you're deciding if you want to continue to read the book, it's the conflict. Why can't these two people be together, or why shouldn't they be together, and how is it going to end? And so that's what's carrying you, that conflict. I think that's why the stepbrother books are so big right now, because that's like conflict in one word.
Yeah.
One word. It's beautiful. I love it so much, because it's like the perfect word. You hear it and you're like, oh. I know a lot of people say, well, stepbrother, it's not blood related, there's not really conflict, but there so is. There absolutely is.
Absolutely.
I mean, even if you're a new family relation, there's still that weirdness from the outside. So it's perfect. That's conflict in one word. Boom. So that's the biggest thing with the pitch. What's the conflict? That's what you're telling.
Yeah, otherwise it's just a book about 2 people who end up getting together in the end. And that's not so interesting. The interesting question is, how do they get there? And what's holding them back, and what are the things that they're going to ultimately end up having to overcome?
I did a workshop, or I think it was RWA, maybe last year or the year before. Sarah McLean was like, it's in the butt. And that's where all the interesting things happen. In the butt. They're friends, but, or, they're married, but, he's a duke, but. So that's where all the interesting things happen. So I try to keep that in mind. What's the but?
I was in a workshop at RWA 2 years ago, because I was very hopeless on writing anything condensed about what I was the sit there for 5 minutes and tell you what my story is about person at that point. I had no clue how to condense it. And so I went to every workshop they had on pitches and synopses and everything else, because I needed so much help. And they kept saying, okay, write what it's about, and then cut it in half, and then cut it in half, and then cut it in half. And they kept going line by line and just You don't need this word. You already told me this in the first line. You don't need to tell me this again. And eventually I still sucked at it, but 2 years later I'm getting better.
It's a talent, and it's tough. And so my day job is writing for television, for TV news, and you literally get 20 seconds, sometimes 15 seconds to tell a story. That's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it has to be informative, and it has to be accurate too. So word choice is very, very important. So the question is, how do you take something that, you know, should be maybe 2 minutes to tell the story if you're talking to your friends, and how do you condense it down? And that's the question. What are the really, really important elements, and how do you also condense it down in such a way that it's not dead boring when you're telling it also? You still want to capture something of the tone. You still want to tell me a little bit about, you know, who the people are, and that's when word choice, what Shari was talking about, becomes very, very important, because your kind of command over the English language can kind of make or break a blurb. So you need to be willing to sit there and fiddle with it and stare at it and send it to Lexi and sit there and yell at her over email, being like, I just make it work. I don't know how you're going to just make it work.
Yeah, and that's where the second set of eyes can be so important, because even if you have a Shari in your back pocket, you have to send her something to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a book
That's
about
where the synopsis comes in.
No. No.
Everybody is just going to send you everything. It's going to be great. So, Tina, we asked you on because you have a little bit of a different perspective. First of all, you're traditionally published, and so you do end up having to do those synopses and all those things. But you not only did the post-book, or pre-book rather, trying to get in for subsequent books, you actually also got in via your pitch and synopses itself, right?
Sort of, yes. So when I wrote the book in NaNoWriMo, and then they did a call out, just, you know, for what's your book about, and send us the first, I don't know, it was like a chapter, you know, 15 pages or something like that. And so, yeah, I had to pitch it in basically like a query letter. And I always look at, you know, in your query letters, you have to give a small pitch or a back blurb, basically, and you're telling this is what's going to happen. You're not trying to surprise the editor, you know, with what's going to happen, because they're supposed to read the story, so they want to know how it's going to end. So I kind of pitched it. Geez, that was so long ago when I did that.
I just really want to quickly jump in. A query letter kind of really looks like a cover letter if you were going for a job. It's introducing yourself, it's telling them if you have any, you know, writing accolades, and then it's basically saying, here's my book. It's like 98,000 words, and you should totally buy it because of this reason, in much more eloquent terms. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, but I mean, like, mine was just, I had no writing accolades at the time. I had no background at all. So it was, here's who I am, here's why I'm qualified to write about rodeo, and here's what my story is about, you know, and just kind of pitched the story to them in a very short, you know, two little paragraph book blurb, and they wanted it. And so, you know, I mean, ever since then is a different story, because I actually have not had to write a synopsis since.
She is very lucky, everybody.
Yeah, I am extremely lucky, because so far out of 7, they've bought 6 of them just on the first, you know, chapter or so and the pitch. So that's where having a strong book blurb or a strong pitch comes in handy, because, I mean, yes, they did know me from my first book and my first pitch and everything to them, but, you know, they still need to know that I know how to write. They still need to know that I know how to condense it when I have to, and, you know, so they're still looking at the pitches. So yeah, I still had to pitch it, and I still had to do book blurbs. I just haven't had to do as many synopses as most people have.
Yeah, I'm writing 2 tonight because I'm brilliant, and
You are.
that snuck up on myself. I did not schedule that in, and I'm a scheduling person. But I will have to write synopses because we're trying to sell a series, and the series, I need to explain what book 2 and book 3 are about. But they're going to be about 1 page, and so they'll feel a little bit like book blurbs as well. But, you know, again, having the ability to kind of scale up or scale down is important, because you may be in a situation where you're working with an editor or a publisher that you've worked with before, and they can go ahead and, buy on the strength of chapters or buy on the strength of your pitch, or you may be starting out completely new, completely green. So it can be very important to know all of those different skills, and you will probably have to do all those things at some point during your writing career, no matter what you do. So hopefully we are here to help.
Well, don't take it, I mean, like I said, I was extremely lucky because I have a friend who has 10 books out, and she just had to write 5-page synopses, I don't even know what it is anymore. But she had to write it for 3 different series for the first 3 books of each one. So she basically had to sit down and write 9 of them just to pitch books to, for her agent to take out. So she's got to have all these sitting there. And this is somebody with 10 books out. So, I mean, you still need to know how to do it. You still need to be able to do it. And Mary Chris made a comment that I really want to touch on. As a person who doesn't plot the entire book out and tends to pants it, they stink. I will tell you, because you will get, you kind of have an idea of where you want your story to go, so you'll write the synopsis out to that point. And then after that, you're just like, and then they live happily ever after because the rest of it just solves itself. I mean, you still have to figure out what your big conflict is going to be, what your climax is going to be, and at least put those points down. I will say editors tend to understand when the story changes and things come up, so they have been pretty forgiving. I know with a lot of the writers who have had to do them, they're pretty forgiving about where the story goes if it doesn't follow it exactly. If you come up with a better idea, if you write yourself into a corner and then have to change it. So they're pretty forgiving with that as long as it ends up better than the original idea.
And you can write it. That's important too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know how many of you are pantsers and how many of you are plotters. Is there an even split? I've kind of developed into a plotter against my will. Plotter.
I'm a half and half.
Half and half, okay.
I'm a pantser who desperately wishes that she were a plotter. As you can tell by the number of plotting books on my Kindle.
Got
I
it.
keep trying. But no.
All right, Chris, you're more on the pantser side, right? A little bit of plot.
Yeah, I mean, little bit, but yeah.
Okay. So does it help you guys to sit there and sit down before your books are done and try to do blurbs and things like that, especially if you're self-publishing? Or is it one of those things where you finish maybe a first draft and then you sit there and say to yourself, I need to put up a pre-order, so I really need to get this thing on paper?
Yeah,
I kind of know Alexis's answer because I work with her, but...
I'll let Pantster go first, and then I'll talk from a plotter side.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary Chris.
Well, I was just, it looks pretty much like that. Like, I have to at least usually have a rough first draft or be a large part of the way through it. I mean, I do get to a point where I kind of know pretty much everything that's going to happen, but that's usually at least 3/4 of the way through. So, yeah, I mean, it is usually, I need a good draft done before I could sit down and come up with a blurb.
Yeah, I would say also about 3/4 of the way through, I could blurb.
Yeah.
Not earlier than that. A vague kind of pitchy blurb.
Okay, but not like the back of the book copy type.
Right.
Right.
I could give you like an elevator pitch.
Yep.
Got it.
Before it's even started, I could give you an elevator pitch, but to write like a full-on blurb for, an Amazon pre-order, I need 3/4.
Yep.
How about you, Tina?
The elevator pitch I kind of know from the start because, that's the main idea of my book, what's going to happen. So that I could do, like you guys, at the very beginning. I don't do my book blurbs for the back anymore.
Oh,
I'm getting so extremely spoiled because I've got a great editor, so I don't even have to come up with the titles by myself anymore. I'll just send them to her, tell her, here's the first draft, this is what's going to happen in the book, and she'll start sending me title ideas and back cover blurb ideas, and how does this look to you, and like the one that's coming out in later in July, she sent me the book blurb like long before, I wasn't even halfway through the book yet, and she sent me the book blurb, and it had totally changed And I had to send her back a message going, that's a great book blurb. I love it, except that's not what happens at all.
Oh.
So I had to kind of let her know that it had changed, and this is why it had changed. And so, we just reworked it together. So I have a sounding board, so I get to do it together. But usually I tend to like, having at least most of the book because of that. I tend to change things, and I'll come up with an even better idea or another conflict. And yeah, so I have I'm spoiled. I mean, I have my Shari there.
Sounds excellent. Everybody needs one.
That's right.
Alexis, I left you to the end because I know the answer to this, I think. Because we just did an anthology together, and I just scheduled something with the two of us, and I scheduled blurb time in, so I have a sneaking suspicion I know what the answer to this question is, but go for it.
Well, there's what I try to do, and then there's probably what actually happens. In a perfect world, before I start writing, I write the pitch, the blurb, the whatever. I start doing the ads, the media stuff, the marketing stuff, the pre-order. I try to do it all first because I do usually plot the whole book, and I do usually stick pretty close to my plot because once I get to the end of the book, I am incapable of condensing it. And I have learned this, and it is a problem. And so I do usually try to sit down and at least do a rough draft of all of that stuff so that I have something to work from. So when I get to the end of the book, and if it did change, I can at least go, oh, that changed. I'll just change this line. Because otherwise I sit there and I'm like, 12 paragraphs later, crap, this is not usable.
Yeah, it sucks.
And then sometimes, I'm like, here's an excerpt. I think there's something good in it. And then Alexandra turns around and she's like, here's your quote. And I'm like, I wrote that?
Yeah, that's really fun. When you get teasers back from somebody and you're like, that was me? That doesn't sound like me. All right, it was me.
Yeah, especially if they're good.
No, it's great. It's great when you surprise yourself and you're like, oh, look at me.
It makes me a little bit sad, though, that I couldn't figure that out for myself. I wrote the words.
Yeah.
You lose perspective.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And by the end of, 90,000 words, your brain is kind of fried. You have to take a couple of days just to, decompress a little bit anyway. Because to look at that, 90, that's like looking at a newborn baby and thinking about how you felt that first week of finding out you were pregnant. You don't remember. Right? I mean, it's been a long haul trying to write this 90,000 words.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can't go back.
No, it's definitely tough, and I prefer to write them early now because at least there's a basis which I can tweak and work with and change words and change things and stuff, and I don't like writing them late now, and I've learned that about myself. I have a Lexi problem. I just blow things up, and suddenly it's like 10 pages long, and I'm sending it to my sister being like, just fix it! I can't read it anymore!
Well, at the beginning of the book, you have that conflict at the forefront of your mind, and you have those keywords and the buzzwords and the tropes, and you know what you're doing, and at the end, you're on this emotional, twisty journey, and all these things have happened, and your mind is clouded. So, if nothing else, I highly recommend writing down a couple of things before you get going, so that you remember where you were before the 90,000 words.
Before you hate all of it and want to set it on fire.
And that's the other thing, is at the end I usually hate it and want to set it on fire. So how am I possibly the best person to write something to make you want to read it if I want to set it on fire?
True.
And hence the reason I don't.
I was going to say, I'll need Tina's editor. Yeah.
I'm a great editor.
I kind of hate you right now.
You know what? I've talked to several people that publish with them, and they all want to know how I managed to do this because I get great cover photos. They do my titles for me. They do, they start my book blurb without me, and she edits fantastic. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just nice, and I get stuff in early to her,
Maybe that's
Wow.
me.
So she has time to work.
That's the early
But
thing.
I like that all of us are like,
I will tell you, I have found out, and this has nothing to do with synopsis or anything, but I have found out that most writers do not turn things in early. So if you turn things in early, you become like their superstar. They love you, and they want to like throw down red carpets for you where you go. Because, and I think part of that comes from starting out as indie, and self-publishing originally is I had to set my timeline. I knew what my timeline was, and I wasn't going to, stray from that. And so I don't understand not turning it in, as early as possible. Because with indie, if you can get it done early, that's even better. If you can get it to people sooner, that's better. I have their timeline that's set, but if I can get it to her sooner, she's happy with me, and then they do other stuff.
Well, and you were writing several books back to back, if I remember correctly, in the autumn, and so you were kind of in a situation where you needed to get books out the door because you literally had more stuff to write without a break, right? So it was beneficial to get that stuff out.
Yeah, we actually, I think the last one, I have the one came out at the end of August or April, one's coming out the first week of June, and one's coming out the middle of July. So they were back to back to back. I did 3 in 6 months.
Are you going to have a release during RWA?
It's 2 weeks before, or 8-10 days right before, or something like that. So that'll be my last one in the series. So we're waiting to see what happens from there. But yeah, so I just turned in edits on this last one that'll come out in July. Turned in the final edits for that, so I'm waiting for copy edits, and then I've already started a new series. So I'm already pushing to get the next series out, and I think honestly, it comes from that, I think, the self-publishing mindset. Just, you don't have that luxury of not writing. You have to keep going if you want to eat.
Publish or perish.
Exactly.
Mary, Chris, Alexis, and Shari, all of you self-publish, and has that been your experience as well? And do you think that that's made you stronger in terms of kind of your scheduling and making sure that you don't just get your book done, but you get all these additional elements done too? Didn't mean to stop everybody.
No, that's okay.
No, it's just a complicated question.
Sure.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
It depends.
It's been a learning process. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it depends on what your personal goals are. I make a plan and stick to a plan. My plan gives me lots of time to do things that I want to do and to not have to be on that crazy, insane. I can't. I'm feeling a little sick thinking about having to do that.
Me too.
I know. It's awesome. It's a great problem to have. But I would be like in an even smaller blanket fort.
I don't know how many of you have noticed she's actually sitting in a blanket fort right now, which is something we talk about on Twitter a lot, and I have not yet done, but we might have to make that happen.
Yeah. We have a blanket fort party.
Yeah.
At RWA.
Yes.
Done.
Yes. We always fort. Our room is the conclave of cuddles. Fort.
See, that was one of those power words right there, that trigger word. Right there.
Alliteration.
Yes.
You need to take that Margie Lawson workshop on the psychology of word choice.
Ooh, where did you take that?
You can download the packets. I think I downloaded an RWA audio and then got the worksheets. It's good stuff. It's really in depth. I didn't get into the whole. I guess there's this whole process with multicolored highlighters where you go through your manuscript and highlight types of words and.
I do that.
Percentages. If that appeals to you, then I highly recommend the Margie Lawson workshops.
Margie Lawson.
But just the RWA one from a couple years ago, kind of focusing on, I think it was actually blurbs and looking and opening paragraphs like, because those are also really key.
Yes.
And in the same kind of way. And using those power words, using those trigger words, using assonance, and it's poetry actually is really what it boils down to. There's a poetry to those first lines and that tagline and that back cover copy that sort of pulls the reader in and keeps them going. So that's something else I've done.
That is so true.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk a little bit about in-person pitches, since we touched a little bit on kind of the elevator pitch, but I know one of the more popular early workshops in RWA is always about pitching to editors. You're not always pitching to editors, obviously. You're also, as Alexis said earlier, you're marketing your book constantly. Whenever you tell somebody about it, you need to have that boiled down thing. So what do you guys specifically, do you practice your pitches? Do you sit there and say, okay, I have a Victorian historical governess book that's set in this time and I want to talk about this conflict? How organized are you with that? Or how much of it is you're standing at the bar at RWA with a glass of wine and you say, well, my book is about, and you kind of go from there?
I had a really easy time with my first book because I had a very easy hook. It's very much like two movies that you can mash together, and so that's a really easy way to describe a book. So I got off really easy with my debut novel because I can just always say that it's Groundhog Day meets my best friend's wedding, and I'm kind of done. I did not come up with that, by the way. But with my second novel, I had a hard time boiling it down into anything that I could, standing at a bar, tell somebody about that took less than what I felt like was 20 minutes. So I did actually practice. I distinctly remember being on a long car trip with my husband, and he's a lot better at seeing that big picture than me. He's really good at business writing, which is another skill that I think helps, like just to be able to kind of cut out all the extra words. So I look at writing a pitch as like really pretty business writing, like you want beautiful words that are going to be those powerful words, but you want to take out any extraneous like words that you just don't need. So I remember like telling him what it was about and him trying to help me kind of boil it down into something I could say in several sentences. And that really helped. So yeah, I mean, in that instance, I did practice because I was too close to it, and there were too many things going on. And every time I would somebody would say, "What's your book about?" I would just cringe and say, "Oh, do you have 30 minutes?" So it did help.
Well, I can tell you from the editors I know, they love to hear when you tell them, it's Groundhog Day meets my best friend's wedding, because then it gives them marketing ideas too. They know who to market it to. Mm-hmm. They have that already set up that, okay, well, this is going to be our target audience. Now, that's not always possible. But
right, exactly. I haven't been able to do it again.
I've never been able to do that with mine, so.
I remember at my first RWA when I was trying to learn how to do this, the example that kept coming up at that one was, it's The Bachelor, but in the Victorian era. And I was like, I don't have that, so you need to help me. But I do remember I sat down in because I for practice's sake, I did editor pitches just to learn how to do it. And one of the editors was like, have you heard of goal motivation and conflict? And I was like, duh, of course I've heard of that. But that was my feedback, my signal that I wasn't pitching the goal motivation and conflict of my story. And that was a huge thing that was missing from my pitch. So feedback is huge in learning how to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you start to get this look on people's faces where they kind of go, and they're trying to figure out what it is that you're saying, but they're too polite to say you're not making any sense or this is taking forever. And that's usually a pretty good sign, if you're aware that that's going on, that they have no idea what you're talking about, and you're probably losing them.
And I think the litmus test for that is people who aren't writers, because I think, also there's terminology and speak that we use as writers that someone who is not a writer might not understand. And also, I think as writers, we tend to be a little bit more, maybe not forgiving, but just like more interested in the long pitch. But yeah, you'll if you just kind of go to tell someone who's not a writer or even maybe doesn't read in your genre what your book is about, that's a great litmus test for can you get it out succinctly in a way that isn't going to make their eyes glaze over.
This is true.
And for me, I strongly dislike talking to strangers.
Yeah.
I will do anything to avoid having to talk to people. I don't know how I ended up here.
Because we're lovely.
So I want to say it as quickly as possible, in as few words as possible, so that I can be done and run away.
And I don't want to answer questions.
Right. I want it clear, concise, to the point.
Yeah.
I want to get the job done, get in and get out.
I can actually feel my skin crawl when they go, oh, so does that mean, no, it doesn't mean anything, stop talking.
So yeah, definitely, like one sentence, I want to be like I'm over. So that was with Opposite. I see you have my novella on your little bookshelf there.
Yes, I was gonna say she snuck
the original cover.
Yes.
Very sweet.
I love your cover too.
Oh, thank you. I really like the new cover as well. It was a socially awkward campus DJ catfishes her bad boy BFF.
Which is perfect. It works. I mean, it tells you exactly what it is. It tells you kind of what you're getting yourself into, and then you can run away, and it's great.
And then I can run away. So if catfishing is intriguing to you, then you will like that. And if you don't know what catfishing means, it's probably not the book for you.
That's fair.
But see, that's what I was just going to say. She chooses the word catfish because it still hits her target audience who is going to know exactly what catfishing is. You know, if you're a little on the older side, you might not know what catfishing is, and you're not going to read NA.
Yeah, and you're not going to understand.
Or you will read it, but you won't understand it as well. You won't relate to it as well. But
Right.
That's where your word choice comes in, because if you would have just said, you know, she tricks him into, it's not the same.
No.
Right.
So that's where, you know, we bring it back, and nice segue here, huh? And that's where word choice comes in.
It is.
Word choice is super important, guys. That's
It's
what we want
very
to walk away
important.
from this with.
They cheesily tell you to imagine you're at a cocktail party, and so there are different types of people, and there's some people you want to tell your book in one sentence, and there's some people you want to have a 2-minute conversation with, and so you have to be able to do both. And I thought that was really stupid, but in reality, that's what I end up thinking about when I'm like, what's my pitch? Okay, well, here's person A who I want to just, here's one sentence and walk away. And here's person B who I actually want to have a very short conversation with about my book. And so I do sit there with my drink in my hand and think about it for a second. Okay, I really don't want to talk to you. I don't mind talking to you. How's this going to go?
10 seconds, run away, talk to you for 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's not that I don't want to talk to a person in particular. I don't want to talk to any people. That's
No, there are actually people I don't want to talk to because I write books with sex in them, and I live in the South, and there are people who get very offended if I tell them what's in my books, and so I really do want to just be able to say I write books that are about people who fall in love and they have lots of dirty sex. Okay, we're done now. Again,
Oh, look, my drink is empty. I need to go.
So that's a good question, though. Do you guys ever kind of try to trigger word not trigger word, that's not the right term, sorry guys. Do you ever try to put those little, kind of get at that in your pitch, the sexual content of your, kind of how hot you're writing? I know a couple people here write more on the erotic side, and then there's some sweeter as well. Is that something you're making a conscious decision about?
Especially for my erotic romances, I do try to in some way indicate that this is not a sweet romance, because I do not like people being surprised by the content of my books. And I am specifically targeting people who want spicy content. So I want my blurb in particular to be very clear that this is a spicy book.
I titled my serial ride me hard.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't think you can get any more clear than that.
My husband looks over at my Kindle and he goes, well, I know what that book's about.
Right.
damn right you do.
You know, and I write a little more on the sweet side. I mean, it's still got sex in there. So I tend to tell people, you know, it's not erotica or by any stretch of the imagination, but I do tend to tell people it's sweet and sexy, and just leave it at sexy because it's not clean romance, but it tends to be on the sweeter side.
Right. So it's a consideration when you're
A
framing.
little bit. But it's just like I always tend to throw in certain words like cowboy, western, you know, something with horses, so people know that it might be contemporary, but it tends to fall on the western side of it too. So until now.
Yeah, you want to key into the things that people are looking for. You want to hook the person who wants the Western, who wants the horse, who wants the romance of the cowboy. And, you know, I want to get at that person who likes the rock star or the biker, or, I mean, there are choice words that clue into those things. And it behooves you to find out what those words are by looking at other blurbs and looking at other books, the titles and the covers, you know, what is selling, what are the words that are common in those blurbs, what are you seeing again and again and again, and use them.
Yes.
Use them so that the reader that's looking for that thing that they like, they can find it easily. You don't want to make it hard. It's not a secret. It's not a surprise.
No, we want you to have a book that people buy.
Well, not to mention that your book blurb and your pitch can be sought by Google. Those can have your tag words in it, you know, and your keywords in it. So that's going to get searched too. So that's a consideration as well, you know, where if you're talking about NA, you want to put in there, you know, something to let people know it's going to be NA. If it's about rock stars and you know people are looking for romances about rock stars, you're going to put the word rock star in there so that comes up with your keywords. So, I mean, that's also a consideration, especially when you're typing out the book blurb. Not so much your pitch, because, you know, if that's spoken to somebody, that's a little different. But when you're typing those back blurbs, you know, for your book, you're going to want some keywords in there for whatever's going up on Goodreads or Amazon or, you know, wherever it's going for sale.
I'll just nod a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
Very important information.
Think about your keywords.
I say that a lot. What are the keywords? Where are your keywords? Can we put more keywords in there? Because, and not just, and we can cram way more keywords in that. And not just because of the searchability, but those words are keywords for a reason. You know, they are keywords because there is a person, there are a lot of people on the other side of their computers and their Kindles that are looking for those words. They have made them viable keywords, so let's give them what they want. And be smart about it. I mean, you don't want to use a keyword that doesn't apply.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to lie to your reader. Just like
Right.
you don't want to write a blurb that's completely inaccurate to what your story is.
Right. The flip side of that, yeah. I'm sorry, Alexis, were you gonna?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I'm itching my eye. Ignore me.
Allergy season.
And the flip side of that is that, you know, your blurb does not have to be a synopsis. You know, your blurb just really needs to sell the book. So you want it to advertise what's inside, but at the same time, you don't need to tell the entire story in your blurb. And I see that a lot when people send me the first draft of their blurb. They've got, like, the whole thing. And really, I think you're just blurbing, like, the first 2 or 3 chapters. You know, that's really all you want in the blurb is, like, that beginning to that, like, first sort of turning point. So that would be my advice there. Because
you want them to then go, well, crap, what happens, right?
Right.
I hate reading a blurb that tells you the end.
Yeah,
There's
it's kind of
nothing worse.
Yeah.
we know
Right.
we know it's romance, right? So we know that it's going to end in some sort of happily ever after or happily for now, but that's not the point. Like, that's not the end. Let's be totally honest. The end is how you get there, right?
Exactly.
Don't tell us how you get there. It's not really. Hint at the fact that we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
and
that there's
that's
going to be
again,
conflict along the way.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Another thing I learned in one of those workshops that I always come back to is a lot of blurbs have the question at the end, will they get together? Well, if you can answer it right then and there, that's not what you should end your blurb with, because they're just going to go, yes, they get together. If you're ending it with a question or whatever you're ending your blurb with, it should be something they can't answer all on their own, just looking at the back of your book.
And I just want to jump back for a second to keywords. If you're really new to this and you're not sure, what keywords for your genre are, that is something that you can look at. Like we were saying, pick up the back cover of other books in your genre, but go look, at the Amazon page for other books in your genre and just get an idea of what some of the keywords, other people are using are. I mean, obviously, you then still want to use your own voice in your blurb, but it'll at least give you an idea sort of what some of the things that you might want to focus in on or draw out are. So there's definitely ways to figure that out if you're watching this and you're like, what are my keywords? What should I be what should I be bringing up? That's out there.
Definitely.
I mean, keywords are something that you can work on over time, especially if you're self-published. You can change your blurb. You can change keywords. Those are things that you can realize a year later and go, oh my God, I'm not using this word, and make sure you can go back and get it in there later after the fact. This is an evolving process, and none of us have the answers at any given time.
But the answer to every question with writing is almost always read.
Yes.
Yeah.
Want to learn how to do blurbs? Go read like 20 blurbs.
At least.
At least.
And
that would be just the start.
Exactly. Or think about like that book that you picked up that maybe you hadn't heard of the author before and nobody had recommended, but like you just picked it up based on the cover and then were hooked in by the blurb. Like notice when those things happen, because for a lot of us, we read what we write, hopefully. So, if you had that experience where you were drawn in by a blurb, look at it, like really dissect it and decide what worked, what didn't work, or what worked, what made you want to keep reading, what questions did you have that made you want to open the book. So yeah, I think it does all come back to reading.
Does anybody else have anything they want to add, or we might start moving on to our next segment here? Anything?
Good.
Okay. So we want to take a moment to, first of all, thank everybody for doing this, and then also to talk about, we introduced everybody at the beginning, now we want to talk a little bit about what they have that is either coming up or just out. We mentioned a couple of new releases, but Shari, if you want to start us out, what have you got for us?
Well, I just released on Friday the first installment of my new Filthy Biker serial. So Ride Me Hard is out, and
Woohoo!
I love it.
I enjoyed it thoroughly, just saying.
thank you.
When does book 2 drop? The first?
I'm sorry?
Book 2 drops on the 1st?
On the 1st of June. So the next installment, just one a month for the next several months. And this August, I'll have the 3rd book in the Rockstar series that I'm writing with Amber Lynn.
Great.
So the 3rd book will be out in August. So.
And people can sign up for your newsletter to get all the updates on when all that's coming up?
They can do that. ShariSlade.com.
Wonderful. And we have a link also on the First Draft Writing site as well. So, Tina, what have you got coming up? Or already out?
Yeah, I just released, on the 28th, I just released the first in a new series, and that is Heart's Desire, which I'm super excited. It's sitting way high on Barnes & Noble today. I'm like totally jazzed.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was so excited to see myself next to Norm Roberts. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. My husband had to take pictures. It won't last long, but hey, it lasts for today. That's all I care about. And then the second book will come out June 2nd. The third book will come out July 14th. And then hopefully we'll have one more in the series coming up later at the end of this year, if not early next year. And then now I'm starting a new series. This one will be a 7-book series, family.
Ooh, wonderful. Is this also a Western?
Sort of. Oh, you want the pitch? You want the pitch?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a football player whose family owns a ranch in Hidden Falls, and he's injured and comes back, meets a kindergarten teacher with a little boy who's deaf and has cochlear implants, and she was abandoned by her ex-husband. So they end up, she's got commitment issues, he's got commitment issues, and how they work through their commitment issues together.
Did you like just flip through how many heartstrings can I tug in
Pretty
one book?
much. Pretty much. Well, no, this is where it changes, because when I pitched it originally to my agent, I said the little boy was going to be autistic, and I decided to change it when I started writing. So, but I ended up going with cochlear implants because my nephew has them. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to make the cutest darn little kid ever, and it's absolutely adorable and sweet, and I'm about a quarter of the way through it. About a third of the way through it now, and I love this one. I finally put a horse in it, a third of the way through, but this one's really, really cute. And it's just, it's a family who has a ranch, so it's the whole family thing. So the whole series will go through the family, and then if we go from there to the town, we go from there to the town.
Wonderful. Well, this is exciting. I like hearing about good news.
Yeah.
Mary Chris, what do we got from you?
I am releasing that first novel that is Groundhog Day meets My Best Friend's Wedding in paperback later this month. So I'm super excited about that. And you can come over to my blog, marychrisescobar.com, and if you join my newsletter, I'm going to have some special incentives around the release of the paperback for newsletter subscribers. So excited about that, and about getting to hold that book in my hand for the first time, and also I get to keep writing out that awesome pitch for it for a little longer.
It'll never leave you.
Never.
Alexis Ann, what have you got for us?
Well, first of all, I'm so excited that book is coming out in paperback, because I remember sitting at the bar with Mary Chris and her telling me about it, and now it's going to be in paperback, and I'm going to have it, and that's going to be awesome. So congratulations. For me, I'm a big ol' hot mess, so
just lay it all out there.
My personal life is whoa right now. So I'm between books, but I have When Lightning Strikes out, and Tempt will be coming out soon in my newsletter first, and then to Kindles and iBooks and Nooks everywhere over the course of the summer. So go to my website, alexisannbooks.com, sign up for my newsletter, and all of the wonderful things when I'm not a hot mess will be there. And I'll let Julia tell you about the other thing we got going on.
Yes, we have a joint thing that's going on. We kept talking about how we work together. We have an anthology coming out in just a few days, actually. It's coming out quicker than I thought.
I'm like, what?
2 days from now, yeah. It's coming out on the 19th. It's called 1 Week in Hawaii, and it's a collection of 4 standalone novellas. All happen over the course of a week. All happen in Hawaii. That is your pitch, I guess, for the anthology. That's really exciting, and we'll be releasing some, excerpts and doing a few interesting promotional things, some teasers and stuff like that coming up. And that's really the big thing for me. But I do really quickly want to say we are online at firstdraftwriting.com. We also have a podcast, which is very exciting. You can get that either on iTunes, where you can subscribe and leave a rating. That's a big help. Ratings and reviews help people find us. So if you enjoy this and you enjoy the writing advice and the conversation, we encourage you to go ahead and give us a review. We're also on SoundCloud, so if you enjoy this, you can follow the blog, you can follow SoundCloud, you can follow us on iTunes, or get all the access to all of our different newsletters and websites and all that. And we'll be coming back in June, the first Tuesday in June, with a yet-to-be-determined topic that we will determine and we will let you know about. So there's your incentive for signing up for everything and following us, as we will tell you what's going on once we figure it out. So
that's a pitch for you.
Yeah, that's a pitch. Go do stuff so we can figure things out. So thank you very much for joining us, and we want to thank our guests, and I guess we will see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Bye.